Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 1054 to 1055 for the 12th to the 13th of January. So, for those that are not aware, yeah, it's over 1,000 years, 1,000 days of fighting, and yeah, Russia in the grand scale of things doesn't seem to have moved much, but still, whatever it is. We're going to go into the Kursk front first. At the Kursk front, the Russian forces continue their counter-offensive to retake Kursk. North Korean presence is somewhat confirmed because Ukraine have released a video showing them speaking in Korean. I don't speak Korean, so I can't tell whether the accent is correct or not. So for those that can speak Korean, you can yeah, see whether it is correct or not. I can see a lot of people still don't believe in it. For me, is good enough for me to believe that there is certain presence of Russian the North Korean presence in Kursk. Whether they're actually doing fighting is another story altogether, but yeah, I can essentially believe it's true. So anyway, whatever it is, doesn't matter because they are not in Ukraine, they're in Russia. So, the invaders in this case, is the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians invaded into Russia. So, yeah, they met North Koreans. There is a Russian ally. So it's, yeah, I don't know what is the big deal. No, what's the big hoo-ha on that. So anyway, honestly, even if Belarusian troops is fighting in Kursk, it doesn't actually it's a surprising thing because they are military allies. So fighting is reported at Nikolaevo Darino, Svetiklovo, Lebedevka, Viktorovka, Nikolaevka, and of course Malaya Luknia, which is part more of the northern flank thing. And as you can see, the Russians have indeed taken this area around Novo Ivanovka as the fighting is now moving into further away. Moving further away. However, the front line over in the south remains more or less the same place. The main reason is because Nikolaevo Darino is just next to the border. Ukrainian forces could easily reinforce Nikolaevo Darino from Zuravka, and that makes it a bit more difficult for the Russians to deal with. So, and it seems like the fighting in Kursk have some limitations for the Russian troops fighting here. They're not supposed to invade into Ukrainian land from this territory, which is kind of interesting because the special military operation in Ukraine for the Russians seems to be very limited, like in scope. It's not like a total war situation where you attack wherever is weak. Like there is very certain limitations to where the Russian troops can operate, which is very bizarre. It's really a very unnatural war. Over the northern flank, as mentioned earlier, we have fighting reported at Viktorovka, Nikolaevka. Malaya Luknia continue to be mentioned. We have fighting reported at Novaya Sorokina and at Pogrebki. Ukrainian forces invalidated some of the Russian claims because of the geolocation of Ukrainian forces over inside Pogrebki. Wait, I need to turn off my Steam. Okay, back. And there is Russian forces geolocated over in the forest west of Novaya Sorokina, where Russian presence is confirmed. Russians are also attacking Kotsitsa and Chekhovskaya Porozhnoye. So there is that certain push here. The fact that Ruskoye Porozhnoye is not exactly mentioned, the last mention was on the 10th, does have some sensing that maybe the Russians have indeed taken Ruskoye Porozhnoye as per claim by the Russian mapping. So that is the northern flank of the Kursk front. In the southern flank, before we reach there, Kubatki was mentioned again by the Russian Defense Ministry yesterday. So not entirely sure if this is a push through the open field, although I suspect there might be a possibility of that. But there's no footage to prove that. So, yeah, that's just purely my speculation. Russian forces attacking Koncharovka. It could be shelling, but it could be also ground operations. It's hard to tell. Makhnovka is also mentioned along with Komakov, which means Ukrainian forces have reacted to the Russian offensive in this region, and they have put up defense line around this area here in the southeast of Sudzha. Russian forces continue their operations around the Kurilovka region, so that's about it in the Sudzha region, in the southern flank of the Kursk front. All the way to the very south, Guevo was mentioned on yesterday, which means the Russians have resumed operations west of Blakovo. So that is a interesting situation, the developing, but it's very hard. I think for the Russians, it's really hard to take Guevo for now. Swell River protects the Guevo, and there is massive forest around here, so it will take a lot of effort to reach there. So moving away from the Kursk front into the Kharkiv front. At the Kharkiv front, we have fighting reported at Kozacha Lopan, Lipsy, and Voschansk. Fighting at Kozacha Lopan is becoming a very normal thing nowadays. We have fighting consistently since November, and yeah, it seems to be like an ongoing thing. Although this latest chain of attack was only reported on the 11th and 12th, there's no mention of Kozacha Lopan on the 13th, which means Russians maybe still do not have really a firm presence in Kozacha Lopan. We move into the Voreshna front. At the Voreshna front, fighting is reported at Voreshna and Zapadne. Interestingly, the Russian Defense Ministry announced the capture of Kalinove. So, liberated Kalinovo, Kharkov region, which is very interesting. No, we don't have any information or mapping to reflect this. Ukrainian forces have an infantry fighting vehicle destroyed on a minefield west of Voreshna. The thing about Kalinove is, as mentioned in the frontline, in the quick update, is that they can potentially attack southward into the western side, the western half of Kupiansk. So this is going to be a problem, especially if the Russians have a very strong foothold with Voreshna, Zapadne, and Kalinove all taken. Then they could potentially break out into the wider Kharkiv region or Kharkov region, depending on whether you want to speak Ukrainian or Russian. And if the Ukrainians do not have enough time to build up their defense line, then it could potentially become a breakout. But we do not know. Let's see. In the Kupiansk front, Russian forces attacking at Petropavlivka, Zagorokivka, as well as Pishani. The fact that Pishani was mentioned again on since the 10th and then 12th might be becoming more active here. Zagorokivka is also very interesting because the last attack was on the 26th of November. 11 and 12, Zagorokivka appears on the updates. So there is definitely some kind of experimentation or probing over in this side of the Kupiansk front, and maybe the Russians are planning something in the near future. So over in the Pischane Borova front, let me see. Okay, Borova front. Okay, let's at the Borova front. Russian forces attacking at Zarizove, Bohuslavka, Zeleny High, Peshotravneve, which is also known as Stepi now, Kopanki, Shikievka, Novosahievka, as well as Sverdoklibove. So there is a lot of arrows, particularly in this sector here, where the Russians are pushing seemingly pretty hard over on the eastern flank of Borova. So the Russians are still trying to push down this direction. This is going to be quite slow. And the main operation around this sector here is just, I believe, simplifying the front line. The front line now is rather complicated and definitely very outdated in my opinion. So whatever mapping here, this is not reality. I think this is a very outdated mapping, but we don't have the reality right now. So let's wait for more information. Over in the Kharkivka, front or region, so we can also call this the Oskil front, but Oskil River is pretty big. So Oskil is here, so it's still a bit too far. Let's just call this a Kharkivka region or front or sector. Shelling is reported at Okhievka. Fighting is reported at Makievka and Novomikhailivka. We haven't seen Novomikhailivka for some time since November, so it was a surprise when this came out in the report. I was like, where the hell is Novomikhailivka? I already forgotten about this place. So, and at Makievka, the Russian forces have expanded control. This time round, they have taken the entire forest on the west of Makievka, creating a good forward operating position to continue the attack into Kharkivka or into the river or water body around here. So I feel the terrain here is a bit congested, a lot of forest all over the place. Yeah, and it's like it feels like ambushes can be at any corner. So I think the progress in this area here is going to be rather slow. Over in the Liman front, at the Liman front, fighting is reported over in Ivanivka, Terni, Zarishny, and Torske. So there's a geolocation. I believe I put this the wrong color. Drone shelling by Russian infantry. Yeah, this is the wrong color. It's a Ukrainian vehicle that got hit. So, so fighting is reported in all these various locations, but generally nothing particularly special. The geolocation of the Ukrainian infantry fighting vehicle clearly shows that Ukrainians are here. Clearly shows that the Russians are definitely still facing fierce resistance right from the Ukrainians around these sectors. So definitely the Russians do not have a easy way to just conquer grounds. We move away from the Liman. Over the Sivers front, we have fighting reported at Fedorivka, Zvenivka, as well as Sivers. So the given our experience, and also one more, there's also Bilohorivka. So and Bilohorivka. So yeah, Bilohorivka. So our experience, of course, with this sector is that it's always very slow and almost nothing burger. No, a lot of fighting report here and there, but no, nothing much. So strategically, I don't think there's anything of significance. Over the Bakhmut front in the northern flank, there is a massive uptick of reports of fighting in this sector in the northern flank. There is fighting reported at Minkivka. Frontline changes is noted at Orikhovo Vasilivka, with Russians taking a strong foothold in the east. Fighting is reported at Novo Markove, Mainske, Virolubivka. Chasivya and itself also see major frontline changes, and Stupovsky. Suddenly, there is a lot of fighting being reported, or it could be just shelling. Information is coming from the Russian Defense Ministry, so it could be just a matter of a massive shelling operation, fire attack operation on Ukrainian positions. That's most likely the case. I don't believe the Russians are going to make a real offensive through all this heavy entrenchment. They're just playing into Ukrainian hands. I don't think the Russians are going to do that. But but it's still interesting that they are firing so heavily on this sector. Unless we are seeing a repeat of the New York front debacle, where they have redrawn so much troop from New York, the defense line, which was a very heavily defended line, a heavily fortified line. But there were so few defenders that the Russians broke through and broke into New York. Unless we're going to see the same thing happening again, I don't believe the Russians are going to just push through. Over at Orikhovo Vasilivka, the Russians taking this area here. I did mention this in the previous SITREP. So and over in the Chasivya, this is more newer. This by Deep State UA in the day before yesterday's report. They reported this advancement by the Russian forces within Chasivya, taking more grounds, as well as the industrial plant in the center of Chasivya. So the Russian forces continue to progress within Chasivya, despite I felt that it was a pointless place to take grounds. But yeah, so that is what it is. Moving to the southern flank, we have fighting reported at Kudyomivka as well as towards Bilohora. We haven't seen Kudyomivka being mentioned since September. This is a long time since we've seen reports of Kudyomivka. It's reported by the Russian Defense Ministry, and I was like, well, this name sounds so familiar, but I do not know where is it. I can't find it at the beginning, so I have to use a search to find it. Yeah, it's been that long. So moving on, over in the Thorax front. At the Thorax front, we have fighting reported at Krimske, within Thorax itself, and at Petrivka or Novopaske. So geolocation confirmed Russian advance in the north, as well as Ukrainian concession of the Russian advance in the west. So Ukrainian mapping is heavily behind in terms of compared to DPS mapping, or they are extremely conservative. There's a lot of gray zone on the Ukrainian mapping. So despite the report on the advancement of the Russian forces, they basically makes no change in terms of DPS mapping. So there's just something to note. Nothing else in the rest of the front line. Over in the northern flank of the Pokrovsk front. The Russian forces are restarting their offensive in this side, the Baranivka side of the front line. Fighting is reported at Zelene Pole, Baranivka, as well as Tarasivka. This is mentioned by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. These are Ukrainian reports. Fighting is reported at Vozdevizhenka. Russian forces basically have reached the highway exchange and have a foothold over in the northwest of Vozdevizhenka. And the fighting is now over in Yelizavetivka and Novotoresk. Novotoresk is something new. We haven't seen reports of fighting since 31st of December. It could be because of the change of the tactical situation around this sector, and the Russians decided to make a push or make a run for this. And so that is a possibility. And I'm not sure if this will continue to act as a diversion because sudden attack around here could draw Ukrainian reinforcement into this other sector rather than trying to plug this hole that has developed out from Vozdevizhenka. And this is just terrible news for the Ukrainians. As I mentioned, this is not good. The logistics is now getting more and more complicated for the Ukrainians. Then it's just not good. It's not impossible for them to transport. Okay, they can still go through this way to Konstantinivka. It's going to be a slower and a less direct way. It's still roads, dirt roads perhaps, but it's still possible. So it's not the end of the world, but it just make life very complicated. You can see, very dirty. This dirt road. So, but it is what it is. So we move on in the Minokhrad sector. At the Minokhrad sector, there is fighting reported. So Novotoresk, as mentioned already, Promin, Minokhrad, and Lysivka. Fighting is reported at Novopalivka, and this is already into the Pokrov sector. So the Minokhrad sector, this Minokhrad line is largely, other than Lysivka, is going to be very quiet. These are all very static lines. So now we go to the Pokrov sector, which is where the active lines is. The Russian forces, let me see if I can squeeze in everything. So Novosivka. Okay, so Russian forces fought at the Chanske. Now they move towards Novopalivka. This is new. We haven't seen this before. This is the first time we see Novopalivka was mentioned in any reports of this sector. Russian forces have conquered Zelene. So in the latest report from the Ukrainian mapping, Russian forces have captured Zelene. Geolocation of Russians at Shevchenko. Fighting is reported in this sector. They are trying to push towards Pokrov. Russian Defense Ministry announced the capture of Pischane, and the Ukrainian mapping showed that the Russians are attacking towards Virove. Fighting is now basically next to Kotline and Udashne, as mentioned in the last video that I published. The quick update: Russian forces have cut the highway and taken a foothold within the railway line as the Russian forces broke through the lines here, or there's no line over there. Fighting is reported at Novovasilivka, but in my opinion, it is entirely captured by the Russian forces already, as now fighting pushed towards Uspenivka and Novoserhievka. So the lines here is getting really bad, and I think fighting at Novoserhievka is coming from the northeast, where the breakthrough from Solone is happening in the south of Udashne. So the Russians are definitely pushing in two different directions, north and the western part. So this is really bad. And the Ukrainians are losing grounds way too fast in this sector. And like I mentioned, this railway line must be defended, and then they have let the Russians broke through. And this is going to be just terrible. So what it is. No. Moving on over in the southern flank of the Pokrov front, fighting is reported at Novoyelizavetivka, with Russian forces geolocated and frontline change moving towards Nadievka. Russian forces have a foothold into Yasinove, as well as fighting reported at Ukrainka, Novoandrievka, and Sripne. Fighting is also reported at Slovianka. So that's all from this southern sector. Definitely, there is still an offensive operating in this sector, but it's just lower intensity than the one in the Pokrov sector. Moving into the Kurakove region, so in the northern part of the Kharkov region, the Russian forces have taken the tree line in the north of Petropavlivka or the south of Slovianka. So this continues to corroborate with my theory that the Russians are going to flank north of Andriivka. And Ukrainian mapping have claimed that they have pushed back the Russians a little bit at Shevchenko. However, they also mapped that the Russians have taken everything south of Shevchenko all the way to the Voschar River and moving in the direction of Andriivka. In fact, they say that they push back the Russians at Shevchenko, but the Russians are getting closer to Andriivka, which is a bizarre cope. So anyway, I should put this color to blue. So yeah, eraser. Okay, so let's in this way. So Russians are now pushing towards Dashne, and geolocation confirmed Russians are pushing towards Dashne to try to flank south, and the fighting is reported in the Kharkov region, generally speaking. So, and Constantinople is also under attack. This is part of a different front line, but as you can see, they have entered into the frame, and the pincer is now on. So, which is pretty bad. So it's like this is the mouth in the top, and then this chunking down, and then there's a mouth from the south, and then it's biting down, and then this is the tongue. It looks quite scary. So anyway, over in the southern part, we have, I think, reported. So let's push. We can't. So in the south of the Kharkov region, Russian forces announced the capture of Yatarne, and this is also already confirmed to have captured due to the geolocation previously. Moving west, there is fighting reported over in Constantinople, as mentioned earlier. Rozliv, Bahartir is mentioned as well, and then fighting is reported at Rozdone. Fighting at Rozdone was not mentioned since the 10th and then the 24th. So this is there's some kind of expansion of operation in this sector of the front line in the north of the Velika Novosilka front. And at the Velika Novosilka region on its own, Russian forces, of course, as I mentioned previously, closed the northern part as well as the northwest. Fighting is reported in Novi Koma. And then the Russians have conquered Nekushny. So this confirmed by geolocation. However, Ukrainian mapping claimed that everything south of the flag raised is Ukrainian control. I find it impossible to believe. So I have called them out on Telegram and Twitter for this weird assessment of what is actually happening in Nekushny. I don't believe that's the case. The Russian soldier clearly is just climbing up the roof and then just waving the flag to the drone. Looks pretty safe. Doesn't seem to have any active fighting. So it's very hard to believe that there's Ukrainian troops in Nekushny. Fighting is reported now in Vremivka and Rivnopil. So the situation in Velika Novosilka is definitely looking really bad. I would highly recommend you to watch the quick update on the Velika Novosilka sector, as I already mentioned in more details on why Velika Novosilka is now on the verge of encirclement. At the Zaporizhia front, we have fighting reported at Novo Andriivka, and that's about it. Over in the Kherson front, there is only shelling report. We have shelling at Pontantivka, Dniprovsk, as well as Antonivka. And these are reports from the Russian side, and that's about it. So that's it. So this is the summary for the day of 1054 to 1055 for the 12th to the 13th of January for the Ukraine war or the special military operation in Ukraine. Press the like button, subscribe. Press the like button and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next update.